So I am a total YouTube wannabe. All right, I'm doing something absolutely crazy right now. I'm trying to shoot myself at f1.4 from like 7 or 8 feet away from this camera, which is crazy. But I just wanted to explain that I thought it would be fun to try to shoot a bunch of B-roll at f1.4. This is my father's lens. It's a Minolta 50mm f1.4. It's called a Rokkor lens, and it's an incredible lens. It's probably my favorite lens, although I don't use it a lot because honestly I don't like to shoot at 50mm all that much. But when I do use it, it is absolute magic. You know, it's got character like a Helios, but it's sharp as can be. You'll see a lot, like I shot this whole video with this lens because I went to my storage space and I found some stuff of my father's down there. And man, I don't know, I doubt if I'm in focus, but I just wanted you to see how difficult it is to focus yourself at f1.4. Obviously, I'm using these twigs right here to do that. You know, so I'm going to show you like some stuff that my father gave me. You'll see my first baseball bat, my first football. My father was like a huge sports fan, kind of gave that to me. So, you know, I kept like copies of the New York Post when the Giants won the Super Bowl, stuff like that. So everything you see in this video is shot on the Minolta Rokkor 50mm f1.4, and I shot everything at f1.4, which I would never do. I generally shoot at, you know, like much more step down to like f8, f5.6, sometimes f11 if I have things way behind me, because that's plenty, you know. And in real life, when you're shooting a movie, you know, really, when do you need f1.4? Like almost never. So anyway, but I thought it would be fun, and I thought it would be a challenge, and so I gave it a shot, you know. Challenges are good. So anyway, on with the video. I thought about this yesterday because I had to go down to Asbury Park, New Jersey to go to my storage space, which I've had for a very long time. And I'm not going to get into the personal details of that space, but suffice to say, it is of major meaning to my life, you know, and my mother's whole life, and the most important times of my life. And I'm not going to share a lot of the personal stuff with regards to that here. I do that in my plays and my films. But I realized that I went down there and it would have been a perfect opportunity to shoot like crazy, you know. And to be honest with you, I was supposed to shoot a short film while I was down there. Somebody had kind of pushed me to be a part of this short film contest in Asbury Park, where you had a certain amount of days to shoot it and you had to put it together. And I had a great story, like an amazing story to talk about. But I was just so overwhelmed because I had to find help. I was moving from one space to another to save money. And I hadn't been in there in quite a while. And I had so much stuff in there, and it was just, the whole thing was overwhelming to me. And I knew it was going to be a hard day, you know. And so I didn't really shoot anything, you know. I had my camera with me because I always have my camera with me. But this was something that just needed to get done. And I just didn't feel like documenting it at all. I didn't even think about it, to be honest. I got down there and I was like, I don't care, you know. And if I was a real YouTuber, that would have been like the greatest video ever. Plus, I had a chance to do a short film. But I realized I wasn't really interested in this short film. A friend of mine was more interested than me. I didn't really want to do it. You know, I kept thinking to myself, why am I doing this? I'm not getting paid for it. There's really nothing to gain from it. You know, I don't need the experience. I'm doing feature films. I don't need to do a 2-minute or a 3-minute film that I have to shoot in like 2 days. You know, like I don't understand those kinds of, like I do that every day, you know. I make YouTube movies and I shoot them in 1 day. I shoot them in 6 hours. Sometimes I shoot them over 2 weeks. Like it just depends on how I feel and what I'm doing. But anyway, I didn't shoot anything. This is my father. I found this painting in there. This was actually from a photograph. It was based on a photograph of him. My father was actually on a poster during World War II. And so I have a copy of the original photograph. I've never seen the poster myself. I was just told. But anyway, this painting brought back a lot of memories because I forgot that I even had it. And all of a sudden, a lot of emotions started to kind of come over me when I was in that space. And then I started to see one thing after another, you know. I found these paintings that my grandfather had done. And, but the stuff about my father made me think about, you know, how long it's been since he passed, which was 1988, which I can't believe. You know, I recently had an experience where I had found some film in a camera bag of his, and I'm actually shooting this video with his Minolta Rokkor 50mm f1.4 lens. I recently found this film. Well, I didn't recently, I had it for a long time, but I recently tried to get it developed, and it turns out it was something called ECN2 processing, which was a really difficult type of film to get, you know, to get processed so you could see what it was. And I just couldn't get it developed anywhere. And finally, I found a place. There were only like 2 places in the whole country that did it. And ultimately, after like, I don't know, over a year of trying to get this done, this lab told me there was nothing on the film. It was just blank, which, you know, like my paranoid side says, I think they screwed it up because I heard it was really complicated to do. And they never sent me back the blank film. So I don't know, you know, but that's what I have to live with. You know, I have nothing. And I was really curious what was in that film. My father also was, like I said, in the war. He enlisted, World War II. And I'll tell you a quick story about him. My father used to have this rash on his shin, on both shins. And, you know, thought it was eczema or seborrhea or psoriasis or something like that, some kind of skin disease. And when my father was sick, when he was dying, at the very end, he had, you know, cancer that had spread to his bones, and it was like everywhere, and his bones were breaking, you know, his legs were cracking in half. His cheekbone broke one day, and I just saw it fall down his face. Like, what was happening to his body was brutal. And he was in a lot of pain. And so they were giving him morphine, and it was taking him out, you know. And one day I was sitting in his room, and they had just given him his morphine, and he started to have a dream. And I was looking at him, he started shaking, you know. He was like just shaking, and all of a sudden he was like, no, no, don't leave me, don't leave me. Oh, it burns, it burns, it burns. Don't leave me, don't leave me. And then he started screaming, German bullets, German bullets, German bullets, German bullets. Don't leave me, please. It hurts. Oh my God, it burns, it burns. You know, I'm sitting right in front of him watching this, you know. And, but I just let him sleep, you know, I didn't wake him. And he got up and he just looked at me and he smiled and he said, hey. And I was like, what was that about? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, you were screaming, German bullets, you know, all this, don't leave me, don't leave me. And the thing about my father is he never talked about his time in the war. He would never talk about it. I used to ask him questions, but he never wanted to talk about it. And so finally that day, I found out he had been shot. Um, and funny story was when my father died, he had already bought a plot for him and my mom to be buried in New Jersey. You know, they came from the Bronx, and then we lived up in Spring Valley, up about 25 miles north of the city. But he was like a New York City guy, you know, and he was a New York City snob too. You know, the kind of New Yorker that people who are not from New York hate. That was my father. Like, you know, New York was the greatest, the best, the top, you know, nothing like it, blah, blah, blah. But he bought a plot in New Jersey in this big cemetery that he and my mom were going to be buried in. My father was also a guy who used to tell New Jersey jokes all the time, you know. And I love New Jersey, by the way, so don't take that out on me. But when my father died, my mother, her first response when I saw her, she cried for like 30 seconds, and then she looked at me and she goes, "Your father is not being buried in New Jersey. Change the gravesite." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's all planned. It's all." She goes, "I don't care. Change it. He's not being buried in New Jersey." And so his doctor, this guy, Dr. DeBella, said to me, "Wasn't your father in the Army? Like, call the Veterans Administration. They'll take care of the whole thing." I was like, "What are you, really?" He says, "Yeah." So we called the Veterans Administration, and they took care of everything. They found him a veterans cemetery, which happened to be like literally 2 miles from where my mother was living, in the house where they lived for many, many years. And it was a veterans cemetery, and at that funeral, some military guys showed up, and they brought this flag. And, you know, my father had all these medals. And, yeah, so anyway, it just brought back a lot of stuff, you know, and I've told this story before, you know, and obviously that happened years ago, before I was a filmmaker, before I had even touched a camera ever in my life. You know, I was much younger. You know, that was like a whole lifetime ago. I was in the music business. I was just coming out of college. Like, it was all new, you know. Anyway, yesterday I thought, man, you ain't no kind of YouTuber, you know, like, you didn't document any of this. But I thought about it, I was like, well, I'm not making a movie about it, you know what I mean? It's not that important. But it was a great opportunity to do something with this channel, you know? And the reason I say I'm a wannabe YouTuber is because, you know, I watch some of these channels. You know, I watched the guy this morning. You know, it's a guy who I follow, who I can't decide if I like him or if he just like annoys the fuck out of me. Like, this guy is just like this, he kind of berates you at the camera, you know what I mean? He's like, look, if you want to do that, you know, if you're doing this, you're stupid. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. If you don't believe that, don't believe anything anybody tells you. This is what you need to do. Like, he's pretty arrogant, but I kind of like him. Like, I believe him is what it is, I guess. But I was listening to him this morning, and he was talking about he makes $300,000, in excess of $300,000 a year on YouTube. And then he was talking about all the stuff that he does, like, you don't just make money from AdSense, you have to do affiliate links, and you have to make digital products and all this stuff. And I'm like, it makes me laugh sometimes when some of these YouTubers say, you know, like, make a you know, a digital product, you know, make LUTs. Like, who, like, I don't even use LUTs. You know, people are always asking me to share my LUTs with them. I color grade everything that I shoot, and actually, I get everything really close in camera to the way I want it to be when it's finished, using Vlog. Like, I don't really do much, you know. I add a little bit of stuff, you know. I mess with it. I mean, I've gotten good at making my curves and dealing with my shadows and my highlights, but you know, I get it very close. You know, I don't like go crazy going, you know, overexposing or anything like that. So I don't have any LUTs. I'm not going to make digital LUTs if I don't use them, you know. I could create something and say I use it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not that kind of person, you know. And then people say you should put a course together, you know. You teach, you know, I teach performance workshops and writing workshops, but I'm like, do you have any idea what it takes to make a course like that? Like, that's like making a documentary. It's like making a movie. Like, that takes a lot. And so, as if that's easy for anybody, you know what I mean? And people just say, like, just make digital products. That'll be your biggest thing. You know, make t-shirts. I had t-shirts. I mean, that's not easy. I mean, it's easier than digital products, but t-shirts, you know, like stuff like that. But you know, and all this stuff about, you know, titles and SEO and things like that. Like, you know, doing Google searches, trying to find keywords and searchable terms and, you know, getting your thumbnail together properly and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's a lot, you know. So yeah, I work harder on my thumbnail now. I definitely try to think about better titles, although I never win, you know. Like the videos that I think are going to do great, they never do well. And I always wind up changing the title like the next day because I'm like, why not? Why didn't that happen, you know? I try to do SEO, I try to add all my tags, I do my hashtags, I do all the work. But I also have to admit that I'm not as dedicated to it as I probably should be if I want to be somebody who makes $300,000 a year on YouTube. But I mean, I would be happy if I made a couple of grand, you know, 2, 3, 5,000. Like if I made that kind of money on YouTube, I would be ecstatic. It's never going to be my main thing, you know. I'm always going to be a writer and a performing artist and a filmmaker and a theater artist, like, but I'm a wannabe, you know what I mean? Like if I'm not, I mean, these people dedicate their lives to it. You know, I saw this young girl interviewed by the guy who's actually the head of Patreon. And she supposedly can make any video go viral. And so they did an interview, and everything she talked about seemed so simple to me. And I'm like, I do all of that, you know? So I don't understand that, you know? But I saw her in a video the other day where, you know, she had a great idea to do something, and so she called all her friends, and they all flew to Paris, and they shot this video, and I'm like, so all these young YouTubers are making so much money. If it's all legit, which I'm assuming it is. I have no reason to think anybody's lying, and I'm not going to accuse anybody of lying. But, you know, I'm just not real, you know. But I'm glad I got to talk about my father today, even though I didn't shoot the storage space or any of that. But, you know, really, would that have been really interesting to you to see just a fucking mess of a storage space and two guys helping me, like, you know, like horses just walking back and forth with all my stuff? And, you know, I could have gone around Asbury Park. I have another video where you could see Asbury Park. It's beautiful. I didn't even go down to the ocean. And, you know, anybody who knows me knows I love me some Asbury Park. I lived there for 3 years. It was 3 of the most spiritual, meaningful years for me. I did so much there. I created so much art. I developed so much art. I kind of grew up there in a way as a theater artist. The gifts that I walked away from that were given to me by people asking nothing in return, and I'm talking about spiritual gifts, I could never repay, and I could never express how grateful I am to have received that from people. And I still stay in contact with a lot of them. One guy, this guy named Tom Chesick, who was a journalist, wrote the most beautiful things about me for years. He did all these really in-depth interviews. We had great conversations, you know, and like being written about by Tom Chesick was like being written about by Ernest Hemingway. Like he was a brilliant, brilliant writer. I mean, I have such beautiful memories of Asbury Park. And my father never even knew I lived there, you know. My father didn't know that I went back to the Bronx and lived on the block where we first lived, you know. He would have loved that, actually. Although his father died right up the street from where I was living. Like his father dropped dead of a heart attack while my father was in the army. And they wouldn't even let him come home for the funeral. So, yeah, I guess I'm a wannabe. I'm still trying as hard as I can. I'm short on my watch hours. I do have enough subscribers, and hopefully I'll get there. But at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to do this because I love to do it. You know, I really enjoy it. You know, like tonight, I just felt like sitting down and talking to the camera. And it is interesting because I feel like I have, you know, like 100 or so, like really solid followers, you know. I mean, sometimes I'll get 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 views on a video, but generally I get between, you know, 120 and 250 or 300. And I get the comments from the same people all the time. And it really feels like I'm performing in a live theater and I have the same audience members and we're doing a Q&A. And I feel really connected to them and I appreciate it so much. You know, when people leave comments for me, I take that as such an honor. You know, they're like taking time out of their day. Everybody's busy, you know what I mean? They're taking time to comment on my work. They're taking time to watch, to look at what I'm doing. That's amazing. And so I love doing this, you know, like I look at it as a great, you know, an honor, you know, and a privilege to be able to do this. and I enjoy it, and I learn from it. I get to work with my lighting, you know. I'm always trying to improve that and trying to create these little scenes that look good. I enjoy practicing with my lenses. Obviously, this is an all manual lens. I'm shooting 50 millimeters, so I'm about 8 feet away from the camera. I'm shooting at f2.8, so it's hard to focus like that here. I was gonna, you know, I shot a lot of B-roll with this lens because I thought it would be fun to shoot everything at f1.4 because I never do that, ever. You know, I usually shoot around f5.6 to f8, somewhere in there. Like, I get enough blur with a full frame camera at f8 even, when they're, you know, because I tend to shoot, you know, things way behind me, like bridges and things like that. And so I get plenty of blurry background, even at f8, even at f11. But I thought it would be fun to shoot everything at f1.4 today. Just a couple of shots, not a lot. I shared them right at the beginning of the video. And it just shows you what this lens can do, how creative you can be with it. You know, the colors that it puts out are just astounding, like so beautiful. It's so sharp, yet it's imperfectly perfect. You know what I mean? Like, it's got real character to it. I mean, it's an old vintage lens, you know. It's a Minolta 50 millimeter Rokkor f1.4. I think I said that already, but if you want to buy one, you could find these on eBay for like $100, $150. I also have a Rokkor 35 and a 28 millimeter as well. The 28 and the 35 are both f2.8, and they both are beautiful lenses too, but all manual, adapted to the Panasonic S5. I'm shooting everything with my Panasonic S5, which I love because it's mine, not because it's Panasonic or Lumix or whatever, but because I own it and I love it because I know how to use it, and it enables me to do stuff like this. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll find more clarity in YouTube. And you know what's interesting about that? I remember when I first started watching YouTube videos to learn how to use a camera, which was during the pandemic. I was watching Gerald Undone all the time, and he may as well have been speaking Mandarin. Like, I understood nothing of what he was talking about, nothing. But at that time I was watching all the videos and all the creators because I didn't know anything. I didn't know what white balance meant. I didn't know anything about exposure. I had no idea what ISO was. I had no idea about any of it, you know. False colors, like, these terms were so weird to me. I had literally never used a camera. Aperture. So I just kept listening and listening and watching, you know, and I kind of compared it to memorizing a script. You know, when you first start memorizing a script and you see it's like 180 pages or 220 pages and you're a solo theater artist and you have to memorize this whole thing all by yourself, it's completely overwhelming because you're memorizing like 1 page at a time, you know, 2 pages, and then all of a sudden you get to 4 and then 6, and as your muscle gets stronger, you know, before you know it, you've memorized 2.5 hours. But you just have to keep doing it every day. And what I noticed is that you just keep reading the words. You just keep reading them, keep reading them, keep reading them. And eventually they just kind of like, it's like osmosis. They just like get into your body, you know? It's the same thing for me with playing the guitar. When I was first learning, you know, I would try to play something and I couldn't, you know, but you just keep doing it, you keep doing it, and eventually it falls into place. And it's the same thing with, like, when I'll pick up my guitar and try to play something that I've forgotten. If I just try every day, eventually it comes back because our brains are amazing. And so I just kept listening to Gerald and I kept watching everything else and I do my own research. And eventually every word that he said made sense to me. And suddenly I could really take advantage of his videos and really understand them and finally learn from them and get something from them. And so, yeah, I guess I am part of the YouTube community in that way. I'm definitely a watcher, you know. And I do provide something on this channel, and I hope it's meaningful to people, you know. That's certainly my intention, is to have people come here because they get something from it, and they leave here and they feel like they have something that they didn't have before. And it's also important for me to let people feel something, you know, to imagine, you know. I'm trying to like create stories. I'm more of a storyteller than a technical kind of person. And even though I am a tech nerd and I enjoy technology, I'm all about learning just enough, like just as much as I need, and then just get to the movie, you know. I was like that in music too. Like, I learned just enough to be able to produce a record, guitar, just enough so I could play anything I want to play. I don't need to know why. I don't need to know what it's called. I don't need to know the physics behind it. I don't have to know how many elements a lens has or any of that stuff. I don't care, you know. I don't need to know the stops of dynamic range or, you know, how, you know, stable it is, you know, how many stops of stabilization. Like, I just need to know that it looks good and I could get what I want to get from it, you know. But I also don't want to disrespect the craft, and I do want to learn, and I do want to be able to express myself and communicate in a way that makes me a bona fide YouTuber too, you know. I mean, I'm a playwright, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a performing artist, and I want to be a YouTuber too. Why not, you know? But that comes with respect, and it comes with, you know, acknowledging what it takes to do this, and that it's not easy, and it's not some bullshit that you could just walk into, you know. Even the people that have channels that don't look like they're working that hard, I could tell just from listening, the science of trying to figure out how to get people to your channel is very intricate, very complicated. So kudos to them for working hard and constantly trying to figure out, and the defiant act of being consistent and doing it all the time. That's a good lesson for your life in general. So, yeah, I don't know what this video is about really, other than saying I'm a wannabe YouTuber, but I'm gonna be better and I'm gonna continue. And yeah, going to storage space was a deep experience for me. Made me think a lot about my father, and I honestly hadn't really thought about him much lately. This is my father's too. This Jewish star was on his neck when he died. Well, actually, that's a lie. I took one that looks exactly like this off his neck when he died, but I lost it, and that's a whole other story that I'll share another time. But somebody bought this from me. But anyway, let me stop now before I tell that story, and we're here for another 45 minutes. So, all right.